No, one tan palace, master bedroom. Callista clung tightly to the man's muscular shoulders, feeling like a lone boat in a vast ocean, swept by towering waves until all reason was lost. When the waves reached their peak, Liam withdrew, and Callista was so exhausted she couldn't even move a finger. Liam casually draped on a robe and said indifferently, "I have some matters to attend to, you sleep first." The bedroom door opened and closed. Callista stared at the ceiling for a few seconds, then propped herself up and followed. As she stepped onto the expensive carpet and approached the study door, she heard a sweet radio voice coming from inside. "Good evening, dear listeners, I'm Maggie. Welcome to the late-night emotional program Seductive Night. Today's submission we've received is..." Callista peered through the slightly ajar door and saw Liam sitting by the window with a radio placed before him. The man's profile was stern, yet his gaze upon the radio held an unshakable tenderness. Even though it wasn't the first time she had witnessed such a scene, Callista felt a sharp pang in her heart. In the 2 months since marrying into the Norman family, Liam had never failed to tune in to this late-night radio broadcast, because the host of this segment was none other than his ex-girlfriend, Maggie, and she, Callista, was merely Liam's unremarkable arranged marriage wife. At this moment, both inside and outside the door fell into silence, with only Maggie's sweet voice gently flowing through the night. It wasn't until the closing melody played on the broadcast that Callista snapped back to reality and turned to leave. She hadn't been lying in bed for long when Liam returned as well. Feeling the mattress dip beside her, Callista leaned closer. Liam didn't push her away and asked softly, "Still awake?" Callista replied with a muffled voice, "My parents want us to come home for dinner tomorrow. Do you have time?" Liam remained silent for 2 seconds before speaking. "Last time we visited, your parents urged us to have a child soon. I don't like that, and besides, I have no plans for a child in the near future." Callista felt a sting in her heart. She held back for a moment but couldn't resist asking, "Is it because of Maggie that you don't want a child?" Liam's voice turned icy. "Whether we have a child or not has nothing to do with my feelings for her." The word feelings hit Callista like a hammer, the pain leaving her unable to utter another word. Liam had no intention of saying more and simply turned his back to her to sleep. Callista silently watched the man's broad back, her mouth filled with bitterness. She had finally married the person she had loved since her youth, but the one Liam held in his heart was not her. The next day, Liam still accompanied Callista back to the Moore family's home. He held Callista's hand with grace, like the most dutiful son-in-law in the world. Callista's mom saw this and felt satisfied in her heart, though she still said, "Liam, my Callista has a bad temper and a spoiled personality. She must have caused you a lot of trouble." Liam immediately shook his head and said, "Callista is wonderful. When I'm busy with work, she manages the household perfectly. She's great." He was saying she was great. For some unknown reason, Callista felt an emptiness in her heart. Perhaps it was because Liam had spoken with such earnestness, yet hadn't even glanced her way. After dinner, Callista received a call from her school advisor. "Callista, come to the school immediately. The experimental project you've been wanting to join has started its admission assessments." Callista instantly let go of all her thoughts, her eyes flashing with excitement. "Okay, mentor. I'll be right there." Liam immediately picked up the car keys. "I'll drive you. It takes about 2 hours to get from the Moore family's house to the school." Halfway through the drive, the car radio suddenly broadcast an entertainment update. Actress Maggie fell from a height during filming and is now being taken to City First Hospital. Squeak, Liam slammed on the brakes, turned the car around, and headed in another direction. Callista hadn't yet snapped out of her daze from the news when she was startled by Liam's action. "Liam, you can't make a U-turn here." Liam remained expressionless, as if he hadn't heard. Half an hour later, the car stopped at the entrance of City First Hospital. Liam rushed out of the car without even glancing at the pale-faced Callista. Callista pushed open the car door and retched, feeling a dull pain in her lower abdomen. She shuffled step by step into the lobby when the pain suddenly intensified, causing her to collapse. Someone immediately cried out, "Nurse, come quick, she's bleeding." When Callista woke up again, she found herself lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by a group of doctors and nurses. A little further away stood Liam with a complicated expression, and a woman with her arm wrapped in bandages. Callista tried to sit up but was held down by the doctor. "Miss Callista, be careful. You're already 3 weeks pregnant." The doctor left after giving the necessary instructions. Callista touched her abdomen, feeling somewhat unreal. At this moment, the woman standing beside Liam spoke up. Liam, it's already very kind of you to go out of your way for me, but now that your wife is pregnant, you should spend more time with her. I won't disturb you any further. Liam frowned, his tone leaving no room for refusal. Maggie, I'll see you out first. Callista only then realized this woman was Maggie, Liam's unforgettable ex-girlfriend. It had been a month since the wedding, and a month since she first learned the name Maggie. Callista had deliberately avoided looking up any information about this woman, never expecting to encounter her, especially under these circumstances. Watching the two figures walk away, Callista felt a sudden sting in her nose. Until the phone ring interrupted her thoughts, the mentor's voice was stern. Callista, what's going on with you? Do you know how angry your absence made the examiner? They've blacklisted you. From now on, you won't be considered for any experiments related to this project. Callista was shocked and quickly replied, I'm sorry, Professor Chin, I had an emergency and I'm still at the hospital. After explaining for a long time, the advisor finally hung up the phone with a sigh. Callista's heart sank to the bottom. Liam returned quickly, holding a matcha cake that Callista liked in his hand. He placed the cake on the table and said, I didn't know you were pregnant. I drove too fast today. I'll be more careful next time. Looking at his usual calm expression, Callista clenched her hands. Shouldn't you tell me about Maggie? Liam frowned upon hearing this. I've said our matters have nothing to do with her. When my parents come later, don't bring her up either. The warning in his tone made Callista's heart feel as if it were being squeezed and then released, leaving only emptiness. Before marriage, she had indeed heard that Liam dated Maggie for 3 years, even going as far as cutting ties with his family for her. Yet, Liam also agreed to the arranged marriage. She thought he had let go of the past. She thought he was ready to spend the rest of his life with her. Soon, Callista was taken home amidst the joyful expressions of Norman's parents. After returning home, Liam took her to the second floor. This room faces south and gets plenty of sunlight. How about making it the nursery for the baby? Callista couldn't help but look at him and suddenly asked, Liam, do you think you'll be a good father? Liam nodded without hesitation. Of course I will. Callista pursed her lips and raised her hand, extending her pinky finger towards him. Come on, pinky promise, no changing for 100 years. Liam watched her movements, inexplicably feeling this scene somewhat familiar, yet his body obediently followed Callista's words. Completing this childish gesture only kids would make. After hooking pinkies, Callista looked at her little finger and murmured softly, Liam, this is the second time we've made a pinky promise. Perhaps Liam had long forgotten they'd met even before getting married. 10 years ago, a gang specializing in kidnapping wealthy families' children emerged in Kyoto. She and Liam were abducted simultaneously. During those dark and hopeless days, it was Liam who comforted her and made a pinky promise with her. Don't be afraid, someone will definitely come to rescue us, trust me. Or let's make a pinky promise. Things we've promised with a pinky swear will surely come true. Later, the police did indeed rescue them in time and provided specialized psychological counseling for the kidnapped children. The fear of being kidnapped gradually faded from Callista's heart, but the name Liam remained etched in her mind. Callista clenched her pinky finger, the one they had hooked in promise, and suddenly felt a lightness in her heart. The next day, Callista still asked her advisor for the address and went to the project headquarters. She wanted to try one more time. But as soon as she got out of the car, she saw Liam and Maggie walking out of the building. Callista's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively hid in the shadows beside the car. Maggie's voice drifted to her ears with the wind. Liam, thank you for helping me with this trouble. I'll tell my agent not to bother you anymore. Liam said helplessly, I was the one who asked him to find me. Your matters are never a bother to me. Callista couldn't help but peek out. Just in time to catch the tenderness in Liam's eyes, her heart suddenly felt heavy. The next moment, Maggie's eyes suddenly reddened. You no longer belong to me. No matter how passionate we once were, no matter how I still feel about you now, it's impossible for us. As she spoke, she turned to leave, but was stopped by Liam, who pulled her arm and forcefully drew her into his embrace. Maggie, I've never forgotten our past. Anytime you need me, I'll be there. Callista stood frozen in place. She watched Liam gently coaxing Maggie with a tenderness she had never seen before. Seeing the usually arrogant man remain patient even in the face of Maggie's cold stare, watching as Maggie finally smiled through her tears, being led away by Liam. 2 months into their marriage, Callista had never realized Liam could love someone so well. Callista stood there until the two figures disappeared from sight, then suppressed all her emotions and walked into the building. In the top-floor office, the head of the experimental project looked sternly at Callista. "Mrs. Callista, this is your last chance. I hope you won't waste my time." Callista took a deep breath and handed over the materials in her hand. "Mr. Paul. This is my practical implementation plan for the experimental preset. I am confident in participating in this project and will definitely deliver perfect results to you." The office was silent, with only the sound of pages turning. It took a full 2 hours before Mr. Paul put down the document and looked up at Callista. "Report to the lab tomorrow." Callista's heart suddenly relaxed, and joy surged up. "Thank you, Mr. Paul." Callista returned home with joy, only to see Liam's assistant directing workers to move items into the house as soon as she reached the door. As soon as she saw her, the assistant stepped forward and greeted, "Madam, these are all the materials Mr. Liam selected for the nursery. All of the highest quality. Mr. Liam had an urgent matter and couldn't make it, which is why he sent me here, but he is thinking about you and the unborn baby. Urgent matter, thinking of you." Callista, before her eyes flashed the image of Liam leading Maggie away from the project building's entrance, the smile on her face fading slightly. The workers left with the assistant after setting up the nursery. Chapter 8. Callista stood in the warm and bright nursery, a sudden inexplicable fear rising in her heart. She was not a child who grew up in love. Since she was old enough to understand, Callista knew that Callista's dad didn't love Callista's mom. She had heard Callista's mom crying late at night many times, and had also seen them argue fiercely over trivial matters until their faces turned red. Callista gently placed her hand on her abdomen, her heart trembling. Would her child, once born, become another herself? Before she could reach a conclusion, Liam called her. "The media found out about your pregnancy. I'm preparing to hold a press conference directly. I've already had someone turn back to pick you up." Callista, who had no room for refusal, Norman residence, the headquarters of the corporation, the CEO's office. Liam looked at Callista, his voice calm. "Having a child sends a signal to the public that our family's alliance is solidified. It benefits both of our families." Although he was talking about the child, his real focus was on interests. Callista's heart sank heavily. There was a knock at the door. "Mr. Liam, the press conference can begin now." Liam stood up, straightened his sleeves, took Callista's hand, and walked out. As soon as the two appeared at the door, they caused a stir. A reporter raised a microphone and asked a question first. "Mr. Liam, on the eve of your wedding, you bid for jewelry worth hundreds of millions at an auction. Was it a gift for your wife?" Liam said expressionlessly. "Of course." Callista felt her heart tighten. She had never received any jewelry from Liam before, but the reporter had already shoved the microphone in front of her. "Mrs. Norman, Mr. Liam has a former girlfriend he loved deeply. What's your reaction to this?" Callista felt Liam's hand suddenly tighten around hers. She was silent for 2 seconds before softly replying, "I wasn't involved in what happened in the past, so I can't comment. But I believe my husband." Liam turned his head and met Callista's calm gaze, a strange feeling suddenly stirring in his chest. In the evening, Callista was lying on the sofa, scrolling through online reactions to the press conference on her phone. Under the trending topic, the most popular post was a photo of Liam and Maggie together, posted 15 minutes ago, and already hundreds of comments. "Liam used to like Maggie so much. It's a pity that in the end he was forced into a marriage with someone he didn't love." "Callista, are you okay? Knowing full well that Liam already had someone he liked, you still insisted on getting involved. How is that any different from being a mistress?" Each word pierced through Callista's heart like a steel needle. Liam, noticing her pale expression, leaned in and asked, "What are you looking at?" He rested his chin on Callista's shoulder, and with a glance downward, saw those comments. The atmosphere instantly turned tense. Liam frowned slightly and calmly said, "Don't worry about such baseless rumors." Callista felt so suffocated she thought she might explode, staring straight at him. "Then what about you? Do you think it was me who broke you two apart?" After a brief silence, Liam spoke in a light, indifferent tone. "You couldn't possibly understand what I had with her. No matter how much you ask, it's meaningless." Callista felt a lump in her throat. She instinctively asked Liam, "Then are you truly happy about the child's arrival?" Liam smiled and said, "Of course," yet in his eyes, there was unmistakable coldness, devoid of any trace of joy. In that instant, Callista felt a sharp pain rising from the bottom of her heart, so intense that it nearly took her breath away. She opened her mouth to speak but was interrupted by movement at the door. "Come on in, everyone." Callista and Liam turned their heads simultaneously, only to see Liam's mom leading a large group of people walking in a grand manner. Liam frowned. "Mom, what are you doing?" Liam's mom gave him a disapproving look. "Callista is pregnant. I'm buying all these maternity supplies for her, along with hiring a nutritionist, a yoga instructor, and a physical therapist. This is my precious golden grandchild. We can't be too careful." Liam flashed a hint of annoyance in his eyes and headed upstairs. "Do whatever you want." Liam's mom smiled faintly, her expression briefly stiffening before she took Callista's hand. "Don't take it to heart, he's just like that." Callista clenched her fists, left with no choice but to remain silent. After dinner, Callista planned to practice some basic moves with her yoga instructor, but as she passed the study, she heard Liam's mom's stern voice. "Liam, you're a father now. How can you still not forget that wretched woman? I checked the set of jewelry you bought, and it turns out it's registered under Maggie's name. You did this on purpose to humiliate Callista." Liam sneered. "It was you who lied to me by claiming you had cancer. That's why I agreed to break up with Maggie." Chapter 11. Now that Callista is pregnant, you should be satisfied. As for how I treat Maggie, that's my own business. Liam's mom slammed the table in anger. I knew I shouldn't have kept that low woman, Maggie, around back then." Liam spoke in a voice so cold it seemed to freeze the air. "If you dare harm Maggie, don't blame me for doing the same to your beloved grandson." Callista stood there frozen, a chill running through every bone in her body. Suddenly, she recalled the wedding, when Liam held her hand and solemnly vowed, "I, Liam, take you, Callista, as my wife, and promise from this day forward to faithfully fulfill all duties a husband owes." At that time, she thought her dream had finally come true, but now she realizes it was merely a dose of arsenic wrapped in sugar. Callista didn't know how she left, nor how she spent that night. Early the next morning, she returned to campus and found Director Chen. "Director Chen, I've already clarified everything with the lab project leader. I'll report to the lab today." Chen looked at her seriously and said, "Callista, you're my most promising student. This time, you absolutely cannot repeat the mistakes from last time. Oh, by the way, the project investor recommended someone to join us. You can head to the lab together." As he finished speaking, someone pushed open the door and walked in. The newcomer smiled and greeted her. "Ms. Callista, it's good to see you again." "It's actually Maggie." Callista frowned as Maggie approached her, her voice filled with delight. "Sorry to trouble Mrs. Callista, the company plans to build me an intellectual persona. We were just discussing the proposal, and I never expected Liam to assign me to your project." Callista snapped out of her thoughts, suppressing her emotions as she replied calmly, "Experiments can be quite tedious. If you're willing to be the eye candy to lighten the mood for the researchers, I'd be more than happy. Come with me." Maggie watched Callista's retreating figure with a grim expression, her eyes flashing with intense jealousy. Callista entered the laboratory and began organizing the work methodically. Group A will handle the reagents, safety first. Group B is responsible for recording the results. Make sure everything is detailed. When it was Maggie's turn, she paused and said, "You're in charge of the filming process." Maggie spoke up. "Mrs. Callista, I studied chemistry in college too. I can do this as well." As she spoke, she directly picked up the reagent on the table. Callista's pupils constricted. "Don't," but it was already too late. With a soft sound, the reagent bottle just exploded in Maggie's hand. The pungent smell, mixed with Maggie's scream, made Callista's face darken. She immediately took out her phone and dialed 120. "Hospital, clinic." Callista stood there, listening to the doctor explain Maggie's injuries, when the door behind her was suddenly pushed open. Liam hurried forward with a gasp, stopping in front of Maggie, his eyes filled with concern. "What happened?" Maggie's eyes turned red as she threw herself directly into his arms. "Liam, it hurts so much." Callista's heart felt numb. She quietly walked away. After all, her presence there was truly unnecessary. After a while, Liam came out of the clinic. He looked toward Callista, his voice as cold as frost. "Why are you giving Maggie such a hard time?" Meeting his icy gaze, Callista suddenly felt a sting in her nose. As if she might cry, she hardened her tone in reply. "Liam, do you even know what happened? Was it really my fault? Or was it her own vanity and ignorance that led to her suffering the consequences for chasing the spotlight?" Liam frowned sharply. Would she really harm herself just to frame you? Don't you think that's ridiculous? I'm warning you. Withdraw from the lab project immediately. Stay away from her from now on. Callista flared up instantly. I fought hard for this project, and I won't give it up. If you're so worried about Maggie, then let her find somewhere else to gild her resume. Liam's expression turned icy. Callista, no wonder my mother likes you. The way you bully others with your influence is exactly like hers. This sentence hit heavily Callista in the heart. Leaving her momentarily blank in her mind, she looked at Liam, for the first time seeing unmasked disgust in his eyes, and felt a sudden pain in her heart. In the end, Callista said nothing more and turned to leave the hospital. Liam watched her silhouette, suppressing his emotions, and turned to push open the ward door, only to see Maggie leaning against the headboard. Tears streaming down her face, he paused mid-step and immediately rushed forward, asking urgently, Maggie, where does it hurt? I'll call the doctor. Maggie quickly turned her head away, her voice cold. Liam, have you managed to console your wife? Liam opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Maggie looked out the window and let out a bitter laugh. I was the one who suggested the breakup, yet here I am in front of you again after your wedding. Liam, do you think I deserve this? Liam stepped forward and embraced her, gently comforting her. Don't overthink it. I will give you a fair answer to this matter. Maggie remained silent in his arms, but a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes. Liam thought she didn't believe him, so he quickly hooked his little finger with hers. Don't forget what I told you when we were kidnapped back then. Promises made with a pinky swear will definitely come true. Maggie suddenly froze, her lowered eyes instantly clouded with gloom. Meanwhile, Callista took a taxi back to the lab. Several senior male colleagues, seeing her pale complexion, were immediately filled with righteous indignation. Junior sister, did someone give you a hard time? These 208s in the entertainment industry really have to meddle in everything. Even though they don't know anything, they still come to cause trouble. Don't worry, we all know the truth of the matter and won't let you suffer any injustice. Callista felt a warmth in her heart and smiled at them with renewed spirit. It's okay, let's continue the experiment. We can't delay the project timeline. While everyone was busy with their respective tasks, Director Chen appeared at the door with a grave expression. Callista, come out for a moment. Suddenly, Callista's eyelids twitched heavily twice. As soon as she stepped out of the lab, Director Chen spoke. The lab just sent me a message. You've been removed from the project. Callista pressed her palm tightly and asked in a trembling voice, why? This is what the investors want. If this project continues with you, they will withdraw their funding. Callista understood almost instantly. It's Liam. She pressed her palm so hard that it nearly bled, suppressing the bitterness rising from her heart. After leaving the lab in a daze, she immediately dialed Liam's phone. Her voice was cold as ice. It was your decision to have them remove me from the lab project. On the other end of the line, Liam replied calmly, this project involves exposure to chemicals, which isn't good for the baby. Listening to his nonchalant voice, Callista suddenly stopped in her tracks. A wave of helplessness rising from the bottom of her heart suddenly made her not want to say anything anymore. Just as she was about to hang up the phone, Liam said, there's an evening banquet. I need you to appear with me. I've already sent my assistant to pick you up from school. The call ended. Callista listened to the busy signal in the phone, closed her eyes tightly, and could only offer a wry smile. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Liam, holding hands with Callista, stepped into the venue. Faced with the reporters' cameras and microphones, he displayed a proper, polite smile. A reporter asked, Mr. Liam, do you find married life different from what you had imagined? Liam glanced at Callista and shook his head. No. My married life with my wife is even better than I had imagined. She and I are very compatible in every way, and we get along very harmoniously. But at this moment, Callista coolly remarked, I don't think harmonious is the right word to describe our relationship. As her words fell, under everyone's surprised gazes, Liam immediately let go of his hand and walked away directly. Liam stood there stunned, watching the retreating back of Callista, and then smiled at the waiting reporters. I upset my wife the other day, and she's still giving me the cold shoulder. With that, he hurried after Callista. Meanwhile, Callista didn't even spare Liam a glance. Liam felt a stir in his heart as he gazed at her aloof profile. Callista seems different from the boring and well-behaved girl he had imagined. Callista left the banquet hall and went straight back to the Moore family's house. Callista's mom, worried, followed her into her room and asked, what happened with your interview with Liam? Everyone is saying you two had a fight. We didn't fight. Callista, after speaking, she fell silent for a moment before murmuring, "It's just that Liam is still entangled with his ex-girlfriend." Callista's mom was taken aback but eventually sat beside her and said gently, "In this day and age, who doesn't have a first love? Didn't you already like Liam? How long has it been since you got married, and you're thinking of giving up?" Seeing Callista's stunned expression, Callista's mom sighed and took her hand, placing it on her own abdomen. "Just try again, for his sake." Callista's mom patted her hand and stood up to leave. As soon as she came downstairs, she saw Liam being led in by a servant. Liam respectfully greeted her, saying, "Mom, I'm here to pick up Callista." Callista's mom looked at him, her expression turning cold for the first time as she spoke slowly. "Liam, even if it's an arranged marriage, it's still a marriage. You must remember whose husband you are." Liam was taken aback, his previously indifferent expression fading slightly. "I know." He walked into the bedroom and immediately apologized to Callista. "I was wrong today. I won't do anything that disregards your feelings again. You mentioned before that you wanted to visit the resort in Osaka. I've already booked a spot on my way here. Let's go relax for a while." After a long while, he finally heard Callista's reply, "Okay." Liam had arranged everything, and the two spent 3 leisurely days at the mountain villa, giving Callista an illusion of returning to their honeymoon period. On the last day, the two went to soak in the hot springs together. Callista wore a red swimsuit. As she tentatively sat down in the pool, she was pulled into a scorching embrace. She exclaimed in alarm, "Liam, I'm still pregnant." The man's thin lips brushed against her ear. "It's okay. 3 months have already passed. It's stable now." The man's movements were skillful, Callista helpless to resist. The water rippled against the edge of the bath, creating wave after wave of restrained passion. It took a full 3 hours before Liam finally led Callista out of the hot spring pool, thoroughly satisfied. As they passed through the lobby, Callista noticed the noisy commotion inside and was curiously looking around when she felt Liam come to a sudden stop. Following Liam's gaze, she turned her head and saw, at the lobby entrance, Maggie stood in her filming gown, her eyes red as she stared at Liam. The next moment, Callista felt the hand held by Liam suddenly go empty. Liam took a step forward but abruptly stopped. Then, as if making up his mind, he turned and led Callista away, back in the room. Callista heard Liam's assistant send a voice message, "Mr. Liam, it's confirmed. The film crew Miss Lynn is acting with has rented the other side for shooting." Clearly Liam had chosen her, yet the entire room felt suffocating, as if deprived of oxygen. Seeing Liam's silent demeanor, Callista stood up. "I'm going out for a walk." Liam sat there, seemingly unaware of anything. Callista quickly walked out of the room and went to a lounge area to sit down, not knowing how long had passed. A slender figure sat down in front of her. Callista didn't want to pay attention and was about to leave, when she heard Maggie speak up. "Callista, are you very pleased with yourself now?" Callista turned around and saw Maggie, her eyes red. "If I hadn't given up Liam to pursue my dreams, you would never have had a chance to be with him." Callista felt a twinge in her heart, but her expression remained calm. "Okay, I see. Is there anything else you need?" Maggie was taken aback by her reaction, and her expression became even more unpleasant. "What are you so proud of?" "As long as I'm willing to go back to Liam, he will certainly abandon everything to be with me." Callista listened, finding it utterly absurd. Surprised, she asked, "Are you saying your dream has now changed? You no longer want to be a star, but instead want to become my husband's mistress?" Maggie's face turned pale and livid with anger as she snapped, "Why don't you ask Liam who the third party really is in his heart?" Callista cast a cold glance at her and said, "Who the third party is will be decided by the law." After saying that, she turned and walked away. Maggie stared intensely at Callista's retreating figure, her eyes filled with resentment. Behind the screen, the agent who had listened to the entire conversation walked out and spoke to Maggie. "Liam has invested so many resources in you, yet you're still a third-tier star. Maggie, you just don't have the fate to become a superstar. Why not think about finding a way to get rid of Callista first? Once you become Mrs. Norman, won't all those big-name stars who looked down on you have to bow to you?" Maggie turned around sharply. "I don't need you to tell me how to handle such things." The agent laughed and said, "Make your decisions soon, while Liam still has feelings for you." After the agent left, Maggie stood there, her eyes dark and unreadable. Ever since Liam got married, he had not been as passionate toward her as before. She clenched her hand tightly. "I won't lose." Callista returned to the room, but it was empty. Callista frowned and immediately called Liam on WeChat. When the bell rang from the end of the corridor, she instinctively looked over. Under the orange light, Liam leaned against the wall, looking at Maggie in his arms. The music was still playing. That was the bell Callista had set up herself. Why do I still have hope that we could have a future? Callista saw Liam glance at his phone, and without hesitation, hung up the call. The next moment, Maggie stood on her toes and kissed Liam directly on the lips. This scene felt like a slap across Callista's face. Even back in the room, the suffocating feeling in my chest still wouldn't dissipate. It wasn't until the clock passed 12 Liam finally pushed the door open and walked in. Seeing Callista sitting by the bed, he instinctively asked, "Still awake? Pregnant women shouldn't stay up late." Callista took a deep breath. "Liam, let's go back." Liam furrowed his brow and asked, "Is it because of Maggie?" Callista looked up at him, her eyes slightly red. "Yes, is that a problem?" Liam glanced at Callista's expressionless face and suddenly recalled Maggie just now, feeling a bit uneasy inside. He tried to persuade her, "It's dangerous on the mountain roads at night. Why don't you leave first thing in the morning?" Callista was extremely stubborn. "I said, I'm leaving right now." Seeing her like this, Liam also became angry. He abruptly stood up. "Fine, then leave right now." He packed his things on his own and didn't say another word to Callista. The two walked to the entrance of the mountain villa, but right now the entrance was noisy and crowded with people. Maggie stood alone surrounded by reporters, like a solitary boat in a raging sea, her face pale from the crushing crowd. "Maggie, photos of you kissing Mr. Liam have gone viral online. Do you have any explanation?" "Maggie, as everyone knows, Mr. Liam is already married. Are you knowingly becoming the other woman?" "Maggie, do you feel you can't survive in the entertainment industry anymore and want to become a caged golden canary for the wealthy, with long and short guns, asking sharp questions?" Maggie looked as if she might collapse at any moment. Callista watched in silence. However, the next moment, the man beside her dropped the suitcase and rushed forward. He pushed Maggie into his arms, shielding her, facing the reporters. Liam spoke word by word with deliberate emphasis. "My relationship with Maggie is not the sordid affair you speculate. She will always hold the most important place in my heart." Amidst the uproar, Liam unhesitatingly shielded Maggie as they strode away. Callista stood at the entrance of the hall, watching the retreating figures of the two, feeling as if the night wind had chilled her blood to ice. After a long while, she smiled bitterly, then silently left. Immersive translate, Norman's family. Norman's family young master caught kissing a third-tier actress at a hot spring. Norman's family parents' loving relationship was just pretense. Liam's mom read the pinned trending topic word by word. When she finished, she slammed the phone down on the table forcefully, creating a loud noise. "Liam, do you even know what you're doing?" Callista sat quietly aside, looking down at her phone with lowered eyes. Each word on the trending topics felt like a knife, slicing at her slowly and mercilessly. Liam's expression darkened, and his voice turned heavy. "I've already arranged for someone to suppress the publicity. By tomorrow at the latest, there won't be any trace of this matter left online." Liam's mom glanced at the silent Callista beside her and raised her voice even louder. "You know perfectly well that's not what I meant. Callista is pregnant. How could you let her come back alone from such a far place?" Liam finally noticed the silent woman nearby, his gaze instantly turning complicated. Callista seemed unaware of the Norman family mother and son's gaze fixed upon her, silently scrolling through her phone screen. However, the interface froze for a moment, before a new trending topic suddenly popped up. #ThosYears, our loving past hashtag. Callista felt a tremble in her heart and instinctively clicked on that topic. Liam and Maggie's photo together suddenly appeared. Although they looked young and inexperienced, their sweetness was obvious to everyone, and the top few hot comments were, "Maggie is clearly the one best suited for Liam." Okay, they were in love, but eventually separated because of their backgrounds. It's such a pity. Our Maggie was the one who broke up with Liam back then, just to let him go back and give him a bright and glorious future. "I love you, but I can't be with you. What a tragic pair we are." That arranged marriage partner, Callista, is actually the third party. She's a malicious female antagonist who destroyed someone else's relationship. The number of comments kept increasing, filled with blessings for Liam and Maggie, but filled with curses toward her. Callista watched, feeling as if her heart was being scraped away layer by layer, until finally, only an empty shell remained. Suddenly, she found herself ridiculous, actually stepping into a marriage because of a momentary impulse and sincere feelings. She turned off her phone and went straight into the bedroom. Not until she finished showering Liam came in from outside. Callista ignored him, continued drying her hair, and then turned on Maggie's radio show, listening to the familiar voice. Liam instinctively looked toward Callista, and spoke in a somewhat dry tone. "What are you doing?" "I've already taken care of those things online." Callista held a towel and softly asked, "Then what about the person who orchestrated this entire incident? What will you do with them?" Seeing the sudden change in Liam's expression, Callista quirked her lips slightly. It seems he knew that the one who manufactured and guided public opinion was Maggie, but even so, he couldn't bear to hurt her. Liam said coldly, "The matter has been settled, yet you still won't let go. What more do you want?" Seeing the impatience and annoyance in his eyes, Callista felt as if her heart was being squeezed. After a long silence, Callista finally spoke hoarsely, "All right, I understand." She realized that the promise made with a hooked finger could also be false. As soon as it dawned the next day, Callista went directly back to the Moore's house, seeing Callista's mom with a worried look. She voiced her well-made decision. "Mom, I don't want to continue this arranged marriage." Callista's mom seemed to have expected this. She sighed and softly said, "I've already stopped you once before. This time, I won't stand in your way. If you've made up your mind, then go ahead and do it." Callista's tightly wound heart suddenly relaxed. At noon, Liam came to the Moore family's home. As soon as he walked in, he handed the items in his hands to the servant. "Mom, I've brought some tea and tonics for you and Dad. Also, I've come to pick up Callista to go to the horse ranch to meet up with her friends." Courteous, as always when appearing in front of the media, Callista found it merely blinding. Before Callista's mom could speak, she walked directly to Liam and said indifferently, "Let's go." After both got into the car, Liam glanced at her expression and softly said, "I remember, this is the first time you've joined my friend's gathering, right? After being married for so long, it's about time I introduced you to them." Callista remained silent. Indeed, after being married for so long, this was the first time she was being introduced to Liam's friends. Needless to say, it was quite a joke. Liam seeing that she still hadn't spoken, Liam became somewhat impatient as well. He suppressed his frustration and asked, "What's wrong? Are you still upset about last night?" Callista she smiled faintly. There's nothing to be upset about, after all. She had no intention of continuing this marriage any further. Liam letting out a breath of relief. A smile unconsciously appeared on his face. "I heard that your riding skills are excellent. Can I see them today?" Callista was personally brought by Liam into the lounge of the equestrian club, where a group of people immediately greeted her. "This must be our future sister-in-law, right? We've been telling Liam again and again to bring you out to play, but he just wouldn't do it. He acted like he was afraid we'd steal you away from him or something. Who doesn't know that Liam treats you like the apple of his eye? Be happy he actually brought you here today." Callista looked at their laughing faces, as if none of them knew about yesterday's citywide trending scandal. Suddenly, she felt a wave of nausea. She turned to look at Liam, saying, "I'll step out for some fresh air, you guys have fun." Before Liam could react, she walked out of the lounge directly. As she was about to go downstairs, she heard voices coming from the smoking area. "I heard that those rich guys upstairs are all here for a horse's birthday. What do you know? That horse was raised by Liam and his ex." Even the name Chris was originally what Liam had planned to name their future child. Callista felt as if her heart had been struck hard by something. So, what she thought was just an ordinary gathering of friends turned out to be Liam's birthday celebration for the horse. And no one mentioned a word about it. Callista smiled self-deprecatingly, then walked towards the horse stable. In the lounge, Liam's best friend nudged him, saying, "Liam, not bad, you're handling two things at once." Liam frowned. "What nonsense are you talking?" The man laughed and winked. "Where did I say anything wrong? Once Callista gives birth, won't it be Maggie's turn next?" Liam paused mid-motion with his glass of alcohol, suddenly feeling annoyed. Since their marriage, he had never intended to have any extraordinary relationship with Maggie again. He slammed his glass down heavily, his eyes cold and indifferent. "Shut up." Seeing he was angry, his best friend didn't dare to continue, but said, Okay, I'll keep my mouth shut, but just one last reminder, older brother is back from the UK now." Liam knitted his brows tightly. "So what?" The man was taken aback, then his eyes widened in shock. "Don't you know that Senior has been chasing after Callista for a long time? you'd better not be happily waving your own flags while someone else puts a green hat on you. Liam's expression suddenly darkened, and he abruptly tightened his grip on his wine glass. Meanwhile, Callista walked into the stable and saw Maggie riding a brown stallion, stroking the horse's neck. When Maggie saw Callista, she smiled. "Mrs. Callista, have you come to see Chris?" "Liam and I spent quite some time deciding on the name when we raised him. What do you think of the name Chris?" Callista looked at her with a faint expression and said, "That name is nice, but I wonder what you and Liam will name your child in the future. She is about to get divorced, so Liam and Maggie can be together without any obstacles, and they will naturally have children." Maggie's face turned ugly. She looked at Callista's slightly bulging stomach and suddenly sneered. "You don't need to worry about the name of my child with Liam, but you won't even have the chance to name your own child." The next second, she fiercely whipped the horses, but, with a neigh, the horse charged straight toward Callista. Chapter 26. Seeing the horse about to hit her, Callista, with no way to avoid it, simply stepped forward and grabbed the reins, pulling them hard on the horse's back. Maggie was caught off guard and was thrown from the horse's back, landing heavily on the ground. Although Callista avoided being directly hit by the horse, she was still knocked to the ground. The pain in her abdomen made her face turn pale. She was clutching her stomach when she suddenly heard urgent footsteps approaching from the stable entrance. Callista looked up and saw Liam rushing straight toward Maggie. Maggie, held in his arms, said with a pale face, "Liam, I just wanted to see Chris for a moment before leaving." But Mrs. Callista insisted on grabbing the reins, deliberately making Chris lose control. Liam turned his head immediately toward Callista upon hearing this and snapped, "The horse belongs to both of us. Why are you nitpicking over something so small? If anything happens to her, just wait and see." Callista looked at his loss of control, and her heart turned cold instantly. She pushed herself up slowly to stand, looking at the man kneeling halfway on the ground while holding Maggie, and suddenly burst into laughter. "Okay, I'll wait." With that, she pulled the wedding ring off her finger and flung it directly at the man's feet. The ring made a ding sound and then sank into the grass. Liam stood frozen in place, but before he could react, Maggie in his arms suddenly spoke. "Liam, my leg hurts so much." Liam didn't hesitate as he picked her up and carried her out. Callista stood there all alone, feeling waves of heat continuously surging beneath her. At the moment she fell to the ground, she saw nothing but Liam's back as he walked away without even a single glance backward. When Callista awoke again, the sharp smell of disinfectant stung her nostrils. Callista's mom sat on the side, looking haggard, as she opened her mouth and said, "Callista, the baby is gone." In an instant, heart-wrenching pain flooded Callista's chest, hurting so much that her eyes turned red. She touched her flat abdomen and murmured softly, "Perhaps he was never meant to come." At that moment, the hospital room TV blared with entertainment news gossip. Liam rekindled a past romance and has been by her side throughout her hospital stay, showing intense devotion and affection. According to insider sources, Liam has invested in Maggie's new drama project. Callista looked up at the television screen, watching the still handsome face of Liam, yet suddenly feeling that he had become utterly unfamiliar to her. It took a full half-month before Callista was finally discharged from the hospital. Back home, she gently pulled open a drawer and took out a copy of The Stray Birds. In the blank space of each poem, she had secretly taken photos of Liam. The page she turned to read, "Be a towering tree, not a dodder vine. Be a torch, be a radiant star. May you rise high, may you stand firm," under the lines of poetry. There was also her own handwriting from the past. "If you love someone, don't be afraid of getting hurt, but if they hurt you 3 times, then don't look back." Callista brushed her fingers over those words and suddenly wept silently. Liam risked his life speeding for Maggie, protected Maggie by leaving himself behind at the hot spring resort, and even when she had a miscarriage, he accompanied Maggie to relax. From the beginning until now, Liam has hurt her far more than just 3 times. Callista wiped the corner of her eye, looked at the words "Don't look back," and softly uttered a single word, "Okay." She had made a promise to her past self. Then, she threw the copy of the collected poems of flying birds with the photo directly into the trash bin and walked out the door. "Mom, I want to go abroad for further studies." Callista's mom, without asking anything, simply said, "Okay, I'll make the arrangements." Callista returned to Norman's house to pack her belongings. Just as she walked in the door, she ran into Liam, who was about to leave. Their eyes met, and Liam suddenly spoke coldly, "So you still remember you have a home, with your upbringing, you should know that one needs to apologize when they've done something wrong, right? Hearing his pointed words, Callista's hand clenched tightly. She was about to speak when she saw Liam's phone light up with a message. Maggie, Liam, my leg hurts again. Liam's expression changed. And he could no longer pay attention to Callista, and just walked out directly. Callista stood at the door, watching his back disappear from view. Then he turned around, no longer burdened. When Liam returned home from the hospital, it was already evening. He messaged Callista to wait for him at home for dinner, wanting to talk to her properly about the apology, but he received no reply. Frowning, he pushed open the door, only to see 4 people sitting in the living room, his parents and Callista's parents. He suddenly froze, seeing Callista's dad look at him and speak expressionlessly. Mr. Liam, our families have already discussed the divorce arrangements between you and Callista. Come here and sign this divorce agreement. The words divorce agreement struck Liam like a thunderbolt, causing his pupils to constrict abruptly. Looking at the indifferent expressions of the 4 people, he suddenly felt a heavy weight in his heart. He said calmly, I won't sign this agreement. To get a divorce, fine, but let Callista come talk to me in person. Without hesitation, he stepped over the 4 people frowning on the sofa, walked into the bedroom, and slammed the door shut. He leaned against the door, finally easing the suffocating sensation a little, only for a new wave of irritation to rise within him. Is it Callista who wants a divorce? But they still have children. Doesn't she think about them at all? Liam stood there, fingertips icy cold. After a long while, he finally exhaled the stifled breath, and upon lifting his head, he was stunned once again. This room was missing many things. His thoughts in chaos, he aimlessly wandered around the room, standing before the wardrobe. Inside there were only his own clothes left. The makeup table was completely empty, and the jewelry box on the lower shelf was equally bare. In the bathroom, where there had once been 2 sets of towels and toothbrushes, only one remained. He looked around. Apart from the faint lingering fragrance in the air, Callista seemed as if she had never existed. Liam frowned deeper, the crease between his brows growing more pronounced, before finally taking out his phone to call Callista. Hello. The number you have dialed is currently busy. He paused, dialed again, and still got the same result. Callista blocked him. Liam didn't try to contact her again. After all, Callista wouldn't have just blocked his number. Suddenly, the bedroom door was knocked. Liam's mom spoke with a somewhat cold tone. Liam, open the door. We need to talk. Liam closed his eyes briefly, then turned and opened the door. Liam's mom looked him over, taking in his somewhat defeated expression, and understood a bit more in her heart. She walked in through the door, sat down, and spoke directly. What's wrong? You still don't want a divorce? Liam pressed his thin lips tightly and replied indifferently. Whether we get a divorce or not is between me and Callista. Liam's mom showed no trace of a smile in her eyes. But the other party has already come forward clearly asking for a divorce. What's the point of you insisting on holding on? I told you a long time ago to treat Callista well, but did you listen? No. You had to go and make a huge scandal over that tramp you're seeing behind her back. Did you ever care about Callista's reputation? You don't want a divorce now. Too late. Liam looked at the furious Liam's mom and coldly replied, you were the one who arranged our marriage in the first place, so now you want to control my divorce too. If I don't care about reputation, then did any of you ever care about the child I had with her? Liam's mom slammed the table hard. You still remember you have a child. Let me tell you, that day at the horse farm, the child in her womb was already gone. At this moment, Liam felt as if his heart had been punched hard. He instinctively blurted out, what? He quickly stood up and grabbed Liam's mom by the arm. You're lying to me again, aren't you? Perhaps without even realizing it himself, his eyes were already reddening, and his voice was trembling, but Liam's mom cruelly interrupted, otherwise. Why do you think Callista left so decisively? And why did your father and I have no room to object when the Moore family proposed ending the engagement? She pushed away Liam's hand. You've hurt her too deeply. Before walking out the door, she gave Liam a long look. If you truly feel any guilt, sign the divorce papers as soon as possible. It would be better for you, for Callista, and for both families. In the silent room, Liam stood there in a daze. He recalled the way he had sharply criticized Callista that day at the racetrack. His heart suddenly ached painfully. Liam stayed in his room until evening before coming out. He looked at Liam's mom, his voice heavy. Mom, I want to see Callista. Liam's mom put down the newspaper and shook her head. The Moores won't agree. They left the divorce agreement here. saying to have you sign it and then send it over. If you don't sign, they're prepared to proceed with a lawsuit, in one sentence. This marriage, Callista must divorce. Liam pressed his lips tightly and suddenly said, then let them file for divorce. I also have time to fight this out with them. Before I see Callista in person, I won't agree to anything. Watching Liam leave quickly, his back receding into the distance, Liam's mom finally sighed. If I had known it would come to this, why bother in the first place? Immersive translate, what? Liam refuses to divorce. The now settled in Argentina Callista looked stunned as she stared at Callista's mom on the video call. Callista's mom said with a cold expression, yes. He refused to sign the divorce agreement and even said something like both parties must be present for the divorce when he received the lawyer's letter. He's clearly just being unreasonable. Callista, don't worry, we just won't see him. You focus on completing your studies there, and leave the matters at home to me and your dad. Callista was momentarily dazed before nodding. Okay, sorry to trouble you and Dad. After ending the video call, Callista looked at the gloomy weather outside and suddenly felt a heaviness in her heart. Liam, what exactly do you want to do? This thought only briefly flashed through her mind, and she didn't dwell on it further. At the moment she decided to let go, Liam's thoughts and actions had nothing to do with her anymore. Callista takes out her cell phone, finds the number her advisor gave her before she left the country, and dials it. Hello, I am a student of Professor Owen from the Department of Chemistry at Kyoto University, interested in, finally. Callista is scheduled to report to the University of Buenos Aires in 3 days. She lay down on the bed in her apartment, watching the swaying leaves outside the window, her thoughts ultimately unsettled, but soon, her phone began to vibrate. It was a message from her good friend Naomi. Callista. What's going on between you and Liam? Spawny heard he's been asking people all over the place about you. Span. Weren't you still head over heels for his first love just a few days ago? How come men change so quickly? Span. Callista paused, then replied with a message, nothing much, we're just preparing to get a divorce. Naomi's message turned into typing, but after a long wait, no new message arrived. Callista, somewhat curious, saw a video come through from her. Curious. She opened it and saw under dim lighting, Liam sitting there with several empty wine bottles in front of him. Someone was asking, Liam, if I were you, I'd just get a divorce, you could end up with Maggie again. Liam frowned slightly with cold eyes. I'm already history with Maggie. I never considered divorcing Callista for her sake. The previous voice fell silent for a moment before frowning and asking, then why did you stand up for Maggie so many times? The video froze on Liam's stunned expression. Callista watched, a faint self-mocking smile flickering across her eyes. Liam, are you always unable to see your own heart clearly? Before she could think further, Naomi's message popped up again. Naomi, this was sent to me by someone else. I told them Liam is such a tough talker. Isn't it obvious who he likes? Callista hadn't replied yet when she heard a knock at the door. She put down her phone, walked over, and opened the door. She was immediately taken aback. The person who was just in the video call on my phone is now standing at the door. Liam looks somewhat tired, his voice soft. Aren't you going to invite me in? Callista stands frozen, as if someone hit the pause button. She never thought she would see Liam again so soon, and she was even more puzzled about why he had turned up here. In the end, she let Liam inside. Liam walked in, sat himself down on the sofa, and began quietly surveying the surroundings. The 90-square-foot apartment wasn't small, it looked like he had just moved in. The belongings weren't fully organized yet. The tulips on the windowsill added a nice touch to the room, and even the carpet in the bedroom was a warm yellow color. He was somewhat dazed. Callista, did you like this color? Why didn't you object at all to the cold, austere style at home after we got married? Liam, while thinking about this, saw Callista place a glass of water in front of him, and then she sat down across from him. Callista, with no emotion, asked, did you come here to discuss divorce? Liam's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively replied, I've never thought about divorce. Callista stared at him fixedly. But I want to. Liam's expression tightened, the hand holding the cup slowly clenched, and then he took a deep breath. I know about the child now. Callista, I'm sorry. At that time, I didn't know you were. If I had known, I would have definitely taken you to the hospital first. Callista paused. It seemed this was the first time Liam had ever explained himself to her, but explanations after the fact were too useless. They couldn't save the child she had lost, nor could they shake her resolve to leave. Callista tightened her hand and slowly spoke. Even if our child hadn't been harmed, you and I couldn't give him a complete family. Liam, ask yourself honestly. Can you truly be a good father? Liam was just about to speak when his phone lying on the table suddenly lit up. Caller, Maggie. Seeing Callista's expression instantly fade, Liam instinctively hung up on Maggie's call. He didn't realize at all that this was the first time he had chosen Callista over Maggie. At a moment when he was needed least by Callista, the phone call broke the previous standoff, yet plunged them into an even icier silence. Liam parted his lips hesitantly, his voice uncertain. Callista, I've thought it through carefully. I truly never intended to have any further involvement with her. I'm perfectly clear about who my wife is. Callista responded coolly. What you need to consider now is how to face the media after our divorce, and the losses the company will suffer from the subsequent cancellation of the alliance between our families. She curled her lips slightly. Isn't this exactly what you've been doing? Worrying about the alliance falling apart while putting on an act of being a loving couple with me. Liam, you don't have to pretend anymore. Shouldn't you be happy? Callista rarely had such sharp moments, or rather, this side of her had never been seen by Liam. After all, she was the one who fell for Liam first, so even in an arranged marriage, she plunged in headfirst, hoping only for a good outcome. Now that things have gone against her wishes, she has also come to see the truth that she would never be the top priority in Liam's heart. In that case, she no longer wished to force it. However, Liam's explanation was meaningless. Except for forcing her to recall again and again the pain of being abandoned, Callista closed her eyes briefly, stood up, walked to the door, opened it, and softly said, Mr. Chi, please come in. Liam also felt a surge of anger. In this situation, he had no choice but to leave while suppressing his temper. As he walked out the door, he heard Callista close it behind him, the lock clicking shut with a click. Liam laughed in disbelief, yet, from the bottom of his heart, a strange and indescribable bitterness arose. He paused slightly but finally walked out of the apartment without looking back. An hour later, Liam arrived at an underground bar following the address on his phone. He pushed open the wooden door at the end of the alley, walked down the winding stairs, and as he opened another door, a wave of heat and loud music hit him. He had always gone to concert halls. This kind of chaotic environment was completely new to him. He frowned slightly, clearly uncomfortable, when he saw someone waving at him. Liam, over here. Liam had no choice but to walk over. Patrick gave him a firm pat on the shoulder. It's been 5 or 6 years since we last met. Right. What brings you to Argentina? Liam didn't want to elaborate, uttering just 2 words, business. Patrick looked at his college classmate, keenly sensing his off mood, and chose not to press further, shifting the topic instead. When you got married, I was conducting research in Iceland and couldn't make it back. Otherwise, I'd have loved to see what Callista looks like, someone who could make even someone like you relent on the arranged marriage front. Liam placed his wine glass on the table. What's so strange about it? We all have 2 eyes and 1 mouth. Patrick shook his head. That's not it at all. How long has your family been pressuring you about the arranged marriage? You've been holding on to your feelings for Maggie without giving in, yet when it comes to that Callista, you agreed. Honestly, if I didn't know about your feelings for Maggie, I'd really suspect you of falling for someone else. Liam was somewhat stunned. Indeed, why was it that when it came to Callista, he had given in to the arranged marriage, even after the marriage? He had never considered divorce. Patrick's voice continued. By the way, are you still in touch with Maggie? Don't go being ambiguous with her after getting married. That'd just be pure heartbreak, wouldn't it? Liam belatedly recalled past events, how he'd repeatedly made headlines for losing his temper over Maggie. Looking back, it seemed he'd rarely considered Callista's feelings during those times. He took a sip of the drink before him, his heart still heavy with unease. But hadn't he explicitly told Callista before marriage that there was someone else he loved? Wasn't that the case? Patrick, seeing that he had fallen silent, gently elbowed him and said, What are you thinking about? I'm going back to my country in a couple of days. Why don't you bring your wife out and we can meet up? I'm quite curious about her. Liam suddenly felt annoyed and replied coldly, What's there to be curious about? Come on, you're even jealous about this. Isn't your possessiveness a bit too much? Patrick smirked, then suddenly froze and looked at Liam in shock. Wait a minute. Why are you treating this Callista just like you treated Maggie? Liam, could it be that you've actually fallen for your wife? These words struck Liam like a thunderbolt. He wanted to retort, but an indescribable emotion surged in his heart. He remained silent, thinking of the past few months since their marriage every time he saw Callista at home. Every time he held her as they fell asleep, every time he felt that sense of security when she called his name. That feeling was strange. It wasn't politeness, nor courtesy, nor even the excitement one should feel toward a marriage of convenience. It was a sense of security he had never even felt with Maggie. It was the indescribable pleasure he felt when he realized Callista liked him. Liam gripped the wine glass firmly, and after a long while, he drained the glass in one gulp and slammed it down. Another drink. He should have noticed the source of this inexplicable emotion long ago. Why does he clearly resist Callista and the child in her belly, yet still secretly look forward to the arrival of that child? Why did he, upon learning that Callista was getting a divorce, inquire everywhere about her whereabouts and buy the fastest flight to Argentina? The layer of shame covering his heart was completely pulled back, and the emotions that had been suppressed revealed themselves before his own eyes. I like her. Liam had long fallen in love with Callista already. Liam drove back to the building where Callista lived again. Outside the car, fierce winds were blowing, and the tree shadows were swaying. He sat inside the car, the howling wind echoing the turmoil in his heart, not knowing where to put his feelings. He could only look up at the light shining from Callista's apartment window, trying to imagine what she might be doing, but in the end, Liam closed his eyes with a bitter smile. He knew absolutely nothing about Callista. Since their marriage, he remained unaware of her preferences or how she spent her free time. The only thing he could recall was her indifferent expression and determined words about wanting a divorce during their meeting that afternoon. Liam raised his hand and rubbed his face hard. When his phone rang again, the assistant's voice sounded somewhat panicked on the other end. "Mr. Liam, something's wrong with Miss Lynn. She insists on checking out of the hospital, but the doctor said her leg injury hasn't healed yet." Liam replied indifferently. "If she wants to leave, let her. She has her agent to take care of her." The assistant was taken aback, but before he could speak, Maggie took the phone directly from him. Maggie calmly said, "Liam, thank you for taking care of me during this time. I don't want to bother you any further." In the past, whenever she treated Liam with this aloof yet close attitude, Liam would get anxious, then look at her with indulgent helplessness and agree to any of her requests. But this time, all Maggie got from the other end of the phone was a slightly cold hum. Maggie suddenly widened her eyes, but seeing her assistant nearby, she had to maintain her composure, handing the phone over. She pretended to be calm and said, "Although the doctor said my leg injury is serious, for the sake of filming, I have to leave the hospital." She forced a smile. "And thank you for staying with me at the hospital all this time. Sorry for the trouble." The assistant quickly waved his hand and said, No, this is all from Mr. Liam." Maggie watched helplessly as the call ended, and suddenly she felt a bit uneasy. She asked, "You know, Mr. Liam seems quite busy these 2 days. Is anything going on?" The assistant hesitated for a moment, but still didn't dare to mention Liam's personal matters, and simply replied, "Mr. Liam has gone to Argentina." After saying this, the assistant didn't utter another word. Maggie thought it was just business and didn't ask further. On the other side, Liam hung up the phone, thinking about Maggie's last words. After much hesitation, "I still didn't send any more messages. Maggie is an adult now, and she should be capable of taking responsibility for her own decisions, and he should also learn to let go." Liam held his phone and absent-mindedly opened Callista's WeChat chat window, staring at the sparse conversation history. His expression darkened as he scrolled upward, line by line. They became friends on the day their arranged marriage was confirmed. Then came discussions about how to hold the wedding and what kind of wedding attire to choose. It was clear that Callista was looking forward to the wedding, as she was the one actively sending options for consideration. He rarely responded, ultimately selecting their wedding attire based on his own preferences. But that wedding dress was also worth 7 figures. At the time, he was only thinking about media coverage and ensuring the Moore family's social standing matched, so he couldn't be too perfunctory, looking at the wedding dress in the picture. He belatedly realized that this dress probably wasn't what Callista wanted, because at the time, Callista took 10 minutes to reply with just a single okay. Later, when finalizing the floral arrangements for the wedding venue, he actually noticed the tulips Callista had chosen, but he felt that roses better represented a wedding, so he rejected her suggestion. Callista didn't object at all, and agreed to his wishes. Liam looked at the final selections, and suddenly his heart tightened. Nothing on this wedding was to Callista's liking. With a flash of lightning, the rain poured down, hitting the windshield as chaotically as Liam's heart at that moment. In the distance, a silver-gray Maserati slowly approached and came to a precise stop right below the apartment building. Then, the person who stepped out of it made Liam suddenly tighten his grip on his phone. Rex. Liam wasn't sure why Rex would be here at this time. But he remembered his friend mentioning that Rex had been chasing after Callista. A sense of oppression unlike anything he had felt before surged in his chest. Liam opened the car door, stepped out into the rain without hesitation, and hurried into the apartment building. When he took the elevator to the floor where Callista was, he just saw Rex walking into the room. Bang, the door closed, leaving only the umbrella that Rex had been holding earlier standing by the entrance. Forming a puddle of water on the wooden floor, that puddle seemed to seep into Liam's heart, making him feel suffocated and causing him to lose his usual composure. He stepped forward, raised his hand, knocked on the door, and then saw Callista's surprised expression. Liam saw his own disheveled state reflected in her eyes, but he couldn't care less, only saying, "The weather's bad, the hotel is fully booked, whatever the considerations." Callista couldn't just turn Liam away at the door. She moved aside slightly. "Come in." Liam walked in and saw Rex sitting on the sofa, and nodded toward him. "Liam, long time no see." His calm expression sharply contrasted with the disheveled appearance of Liam. However, Liam keenly noticed that although Rex wore a smile, his eyes still held hostility. He frowned and saw Rex stand up. "I've delivered the items for the professor, so I won't disturb you further. I'll see you at school in 3 days. Callista smiled at him. "All right. The weather isn't great, so be careful on your way back." Rex smiled faintly. "There's a driver. If he can't handle this kind of weather, I might need to reconsider whether his high salary is justified." Seeing the two conversing familiarly, Liam sat there feeling cold, with his wet clothes clinging to his body. The door opened and closed, and Rex left. When Callista turned around, she saw Liam looking at her, his eyes shining with a light she couldn't understand. Only for a moment did Liam allow himself to feel that bit of disappointment before he smiled at her and asked, "Do you have any cold medicine here? I'd like to take some as a precaution." "It's okay." Callista has known Rex for a long time. That's why she smiles naturally at him. Even if she had just smiled warmly at Rex, her expression turned icy the moment she turned away, but it couldn't change the fact that they were still husband and wife. Even couples in the midst of divorce negotiations, Liam thought, somewhat absent-mindedly. Seeing Callista approaching with cold medicine, the words kept circling in his mind slipped out of his mouth. "Callista, I don't want a divorce." Callista placed the cold medicine on the table in front of him and said coolly, "It's no longer about what you want. Take the cold medicine. I don't have an empty room available either. If you don't mind, you can just spend the night on the sofa." Callista clearly didn't want to talk about it, and Liam, understanding the hint, took a sip of water and swallowed a cold pill. Dropping the subject, the medicine worked quickly, and Liam soon felt drowsy, watching Callista typing away at her computer. His eyelids grew heavy, and he fell asleep like that. Callista, after sending the email, turned around and saw the sleeping man. She paused for a moment, then went to the bed, took a blanket, and gently covered him with it. She gazed at the swaying tree shadows outside the window, feeling somewhat lost. She never thought that Liam would be so determined not to divorce, nor did she expect that just as she wanted to let go completely, he would suddenly reappear in her life so forcefully. Is it Liam's mom putting pressure on him? Or is there another reason Liam is unwilling to give up on this marriage? Callista was just about to return to her room when she heard Liam's indistinct murmur, "We made a promise. I won't break it." Maggie. When Liam woke up the next day, he felt completely disoriented about what day it was. His attempt to prevent catching a cold failed, his head felt heavy, and his voice sounded stuffy. He was miserable, yet beneath the misery, there was a faint glimmer of secret delight. Callista isn't a cold-hearted person. Last night, she let him stay over because the hotel was fully booked. Now that he's genuinely sick and has nowhere to go, perhaps she could. Liam was just thinking when he heard the bedroom door open. He looked over and froze. "Didn't you sleep well last night?" It was truly because Callista's dark circles were too severe, and her expression was unusually cold. Liam asked himself honestly if he was the reason she had slept poorly, but after all, she had slept well even when they had lain together on the same bed before. The next second, he heard Callista speak in a voice even colder than yesterday. "It stopped raining outside. You can go now." Liam was probably being given such a dismissal for the first time, and no matter how much he wanted to make amends, he couldn't tolerate such treatment. He suddenly stood up, the blanket lightly falling to the ground, accompanied by the man's slightly cold voice. "Callista, what exactly do you want from me? You're unhappy when I make mistakes, but have you ever properly communicated with me? I'm not a mind reader who can know every single thought of yours. You said you want a divorce. Do you even know that both parties must be present to file for divorce? Do you have any basic respect for this marriage? I've come all this way to find you, but where are you?" He had always been cold-natured and rarely spoke so much at once to anyone. After speaking, his chest rose and fell heavily, and his dark eyes fixed intently on Callista, stubbornly waiting for an answer, and Callista gave him her answer. "I don't want to communicate with you. I only want a divorce." Liam, all the anger surged back with those words, and he stared at Callista, clenching his jaw tightly. Finally, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Hearing the deafening sound of the door slamming, Callista's heart trembled. She lowered her eyes to look at the carpet on the floor and gave a bitter smile. Why had she ever expected Liam to change? He had never been a patient person with her, had he? She picked up the blanket and carelessly threw it aside, then sank onto the sofa. The fabric still held Liam's warmth. Callista irritably swept a hand across the leather couch, but she suddenly heard a thud. Liam's phone had fallen to the ground, and the screen lit up from the impact. Callista instinctively lowered her head and saw the photo on the screen. It was her and Liam's wedding photo. Whether it was just her imagination or not, Liam, in the photo, also seemed to have a hint of tenderness in his eyes. Callista pressed her lips together, picked up her phone, and saw a series of message notifications popping up one after another. They were all from Maggie. The message wasn't fully displayed. Callista could only see a few lines. "Liam, I'm boarding the plane soon. Liam, you promised to take me to see everything." As message after message popped up, Callista intended to mute her phone, but accidentally opened the message instead. Liam's phone wasn't set with a password, so she simply jumped into Maggie's chat window. Under Maggie's nickname, there was also a line of small text, "The one I decided on when I was little." Callista, as if possessed, clicked into it. Just saw that Liam wrote a lot of things in the note to Maggie. The top line read, "We met through a kidnapping, and I fell for you at that pinky promise." Callista stared at these words, feeling as if her mind had suddenly gone buzz. Kidnapping, pinky promise. These two keywords triggered her most profound memory. The scene that made her remember Liam became the reason Liam fell in love with Maggie. What happened in between? Callista had no way of knowing. She muted her phone and pressed the lock button. After some thought, she still found Liam's assistant's number in her phone and called it. On the other side, someone answered quickly, and the assistant's voice sounded somewhat uneasy. "Mrs. Callista, what's wrong?" Callista paused. It seemed that people around Liam still didn't know about their divorce. She said, "Liam's phone was left with me. Try to contact him and let him know." After the assistant hung up, Callista ended the call and stood up to pack her luggage. Before long, there was a knock on the door. Callista went over and opened the door, finding a man in a business suit standing there. "Madam," he said, "I'm here to pick up the phone for our Mr. Liam." Callista, without giving it much thought, handed him the phone and asked, "Do you have errand services in Argentina too?" The man was taken aback, then smiled. "Madam, I'm the head of the branch office here for the Norman family group." Callista frowned. "Norman family has a branch here?" "Yes, employees who come to work here generally relocate with their entire families. And the company provides dormitory housing as well. By the way, if you have time, madam, you should visit the branch. Mr. Liam's villa there has a unique foreign charm." Hearing this, Callista understood everything. She sneered coldly. "No need. When you return the phone to Liam, be sure to tell him to get treatment for his forgetfulness early." The person in charge left, completely confused. Callista closed the door, amused and frustrated by Liam's clumsy tactics. She pressed her fingers firmly against her temples, pushing all the events of the past 2 days firmly out of her mind. She would never again feel any sympathy for Liam. When the person in charge went downstairs, Liam was standing by the car waiting. He took the phone and looked at the string of Maggie message notifications. Feeling inexplicably anxious inside, he unconsciously asked, "Did she say anything? Does she look angry?" The person in charge thought for a moment and nodded, saying, "Madam does seem a bit angry." Liam felt a tightness in his chest as he heard the person in charge continue. "Madam also said to pass on a message for you to get your memory checked." The person in charge thought it was just a small couple's quarrel, so he relayed the words exactly as they were. Liam frowned tightly. What did you say to her? I just mentioned to her that she should come to your villa sometime when she's free. Liam finally understood the reason why Callista was angry, but soon after, he frowned again. Was she angry just because of that, and not because Maggie sent him a message? Liam felt extremely annoyed. He turned around and opened the car door. Your bonus for this month is gone. As the car door closed, the car drove off, leaving the responsible person standing there, utterly bewildered. Liam returned to the villa, finally having time to open a message from Maggie. After figuring out what had happened, he became somewhat silent. He immediately called his assistant. What exactly is going on with Maggie? Why did she come to Argentina? The assistant was silent for 2 seconds before speaking. I've heard it's a training task arranged by the company, going abroad to study in a performance program for a while. And then you can use that as a talking point, the assistant said, lowering her voice. Mr. Liam, I've observed Miss Lynn over the past few days. She's quite heartbroken over you. I think what she means is that she probably wants to reconcile with you. Liam stared at the patterns on the coffee table after hanging up the phone, lost in thought for a long time. If it were in the past, when he heard that Maggie wanted to get back together, he would have been happy, rather than feeling the way he does now, secretly troubled and annoyed. He leaned back, rubbing his thumb and index finger together, but still couldn't figure things out in the end. Before he could figure things out, he saw Maggie's name flashing on his phone. He could only answer the call, and immediately heard Maggie's cheerful voice. Liam, I've arrived in Argentina. Would you mind coming to pick me up? Liam hesitated for 2 seconds, but still said, send me the address. I'm coming right away. He needed to find an opportunity to finally talk things out with Maggie. Soon, Liam arrived at the airport and saw Maggie, dressed in a fresh and innocent style. She stood in the midst of a group of foreign young people, appearing very much at ease. Liam overheard Maggie talking fluently in English to the group as he approached. My boyfriend is here to pick me up. I'll go now. See you at school. Liam's expression involuntarily darkened slightly. Maggie walked over and immediately linked arms with him. Liam, let's go. Liam glanced at those people, lowered his eyelids slightly, and followed Maggie out of the airport. Not until they got into the car did Liam speak indifferently. How come your company allowed you to come to Argentina? There aren't any particularly famous acting programs at local universities here. Maggie casually flipped her hair and smiled. It's just part of the company leadership's strategy. Under the guise of further studies, I can travel abroad for fun. Putting on a show like this helps build a good reputation. It's just another routine tactic in the entertainment industry. Liam pressed his lips together lightly and said casually, Maggie, I'm already a married man now. Please don't call me your boyfriend in front of others anymore. Maggie suddenly clenched her hand tightly at her side. Yet she displayed an embarrassed expression on her face. I know we're long over, but I just don't want to make it too obvious to others. It'll save us both future trouble. There won't be a next time. Liam saw her reaction and didn't press further. Instead, Maggie looked at Liam and asked curiously, I remember you mentioning before that the branch here in Argentina is already well established and doesn't require your attention. Why did you come here? Liam steered the wheel casually and said, Callista is over here. Maggie's smile nearly faltered, so she turned to look out the window instead, saying nothing more. Soon, Liam dropped her off at school and drove away without a second glance. Maggie looked at the taillights disappearing into the distance and dialed her agent's number. Try to leak some rumors about me and Liam, but make sure no one can trace it back to us. Maggie hung up the phone after receiving a positive reply, murmuring softly, Liam, this relationship of ours, only I get to call the shots. You don't have the right to end it. Meanwhile, Callista finished tidying up the room and was heading downstairs to throw out the trash when she saw Rex, who had just gotten out of the car. She was somewhat surprised. Rex, how come you're here? Rex stepped forward and took the garbage from her hand, saying casually, come to take you out for a meal. I stayed in Argentina for a while and found several great restaurants. When he said this, Callista truly felt that she was a bit hungry. After Rex threw the trash into the bin, she spoke up, okay then, thank you, I'll treat you. Rex raised an eyebrow, fine by me, as the two were about to leave. They saw Liam sitting in his car not far away, his face slightly pale. Callista instinctively paused for a moment, then turned to Rex, let's go. But in the next moment, Liam quickly walked up to the two people. Callista, where are you going with him? His confrontational tone made Callista a bit uncomfortable, and she casually replied, Liam, where I go doesn't need to be reported to you now, right? After all, we are now a couple in the process of negotiating a divorce. Rex leaned against his car, and upon hearing these words, his eyebrows twitched slightly. Liam noticed the sudden change in his expression, as if someone had slapped him in the face. This was a feeling he had never experienced before. As if he had never known that Callista could be so unyieldingly strong-willed, he softened his tone. Let's not bring up this matter again until both sides reach an agreement, if I'm not mistaken. Master Xie has come to Argentina to discuss business with the Norman family. If you don't mind, shall we have dinner together? Rex lifted his eyes, smiling gently. Mr. Liam, you may ask Callista's opinion. If she has no objection, then I have none either. The overly intimate address caused Liam to frown again involuntarily. He looked at Callista, and moved his lips. What do you think? Callista naturally didn't want him to go, but since it involved Rex's official matters, she had no reason to refuse. In the end, she could only nod. Liam suddenly exhaled in relief. Watching Callista get into Rex's car, he also turned around, got into his own car, and followed the car ahead toward the restaurant, his heart in a turmoil. He had never had any experience pursuing a girl before, even when he was with Maggie. It was more about going with the flow. Facing Callista now, he felt somewhat at a loss on how to proceed. The restaurant soon appeared before the three of them. Seeing the bright red lychee icon, Callista lit up with delight. Rex, is this a Chinese restaurant? Rex locked the car and smiled. Not entirely. The chef inside also knows how to prepare dishes like caviar foie gras. Callista's eyes lit up again. That's my favorite dish. That's great then, you can try it. It should suit your taste well. Liam stood behind them, realizing he couldn't get a word in edgewise. He thought for a moment and took out his phone. Noting down Callista's first preference, caviar foie gras. As the three entered, someone approached and said something to them. Rex casually waved his hand. Callista asked curiously, what's wrong? Rex turned back with a smile. Nothing. He asked if we needed a guide. Liam watched as Rex's expression turned cold. The Spanish spoken by that person just now was very authentic, without any regional accent, so he understood it perfectly. What he said to Rex was, boss, would you like me to arrange a private room for you? This restaurant belongs to Rex. That bright red lychee on the signboard. Liam clenched his fist, feeling a sudden sense of crisis rising in his heart. In places he couldn't see, someone was loving Callista quietly and selflessly, not even caring whether Callista understood their feelings. Liam couldn't help but look at Callista, feeling somewhat helpless as he watched her act so unguarded around Rex. This meal was tasteless to Liam, and he didn't utter another word. The quiet Callista couldn't help but glance at him a couple more times. After the meal, Rex looked toward Liam and said, Mr. Liam, you mentioned business earlier. I'm wondering if you have time now for a discussion. Liam hesitated, instinctively looking at Callista. Do you have time? If you're busy, I'll drop you off first. Callista pressed her lips together, then shook her head. I'm fine, you all chat. I'll just find a place to wander around. She didn't wait for Liam to speak and just pushed the door open and walked out. I had just lain down in a beach shack when I heard a sharp voice. Callista, what are you doing here? Hearing this familiar voice, Callista turned her head slightly and, as expected, saw the panicked face of Maggie. Before her eyes flashed the image of Maggie riding a horse and charging at her with a fierce expression, her own face growing colder. Why can you come here? But I can't, Maggie. After the initial shock, new doubts arose in her mind. So, Liam came to Argentina because of you. Callista turned her head away. He's here for business. Don't drag me into everything. Maggie looked at her doubtfully, and only left when her classmate pulled her away. The surroundings grew quiet. Callista, but her heart was in turmoil. She had intended to leave the past behind, but with Liam in front and Maggie behind, it felt as though they were forcing her to relive those unbearable memories. Callista closed her eyes, but her mind only grew more restless. After a while, she opened them again, about to call the owner to bring something over, when she saw Liam approaching with 2 glasses of emerald green soda water. Liam placed the soda water beside her and said gently, I didn't add too much ice, give it a try. But now, Callista felt even more irritated at the sight of him. She spoke coldly. Liam, I just saw Maggie. Liam blinked. She was sent by the company for training. It has nothing to do with me. Callista looked at him indifferently. You've only been in Argentina for 2 days, and she was sent by the company for training. Do you really think I'd believe that? Or is it just that the two of you are fated to this extent? Her blunt words made Liam a bit embarrassed. He remained silent for 2 seconds before asking, "What would it take for you to believe me?" looking at his sincere expression. Callista recalled instead the scene where he held Maggie and questioned her without the slightest hesitation. She casually pursed her lips. "Liam, after the divorce, I just want to be strangers with you. Whether I believe you or not doesn't matter." Liam finally couldn't hold back. "I never agreed to a divorce, so you can just wait to receive a subpoena. I've got all the time in the world to drag this out with you." Callista's intense words finally made Liam lose his confidence. He closed his eyes for a moment and said, "Callista, I know I was wrong about everything that happened before, but I don't want a divorce. Can't we give it another try?" Callista looked at him and slowly raised her right hand. Her slender hand was completely bare. Liam was taken aback. "What's wrong?" Callista looked at him and laughed. "See, you didn't even realize it. Our wedding rings are gone." Liam's face turned pale in an instant. He remembered now, back then, in the stable. Callista had thrown her wedding ring at him. So, was that when she had decided to give up on him? Callista withdrew her right hand and said to Liam, "If you can find the wedding ring, I might consider giving you another chance, but if you can't find it, don't ever show yourself to me again." Liam's eyes lit up. He nodded firmly. "Okay, I will definitely find it." Callista looked at him deeply, without saying a word, then turned around and walked away. Liam never understood that what she truly wanted was not a ring, but for him to never appear before her again. He wouldn't understand either. Broken mirrors can't be made whole again, and a wounded heart can never fully open up. Watching Callista's figure grow increasingly distant, Liam's heart raced uncontrollably. He pulled out his phone and called the Argentina branch manager. "Book me the earliest flight back home." After a full 20 hours on the plane, Liam finally got off the plane. He didn't even have time to go home before heading to the racetrack. Entering the horse stable, he saw Chris nodding cheerfully at him. Liam casually stroked the horse, then heard the stableman report, "Chris has been performing very well in training recently. Though there's a bit of festering near the tail." Liam furrowed his brow. "What's going on?" "The vet at the horse farm has taken leave for the entire week." The manager contacted an outside vet, who is scheduled to arrive this morning. Liam pressed his lips together and said, "All right, handle it as soon as possible. You can go out first." He wanted to find the ring by himself and did not want others to watch him. Soon, he was the only one left in the horse barn. With a few horses besides Chris, all of which were meticulously cared for, Liam walked to the spot where Callista once stood. Carefully searching with his head down, for a full 10 minutes, Liam even expanded the search area a bit, but still found nothing. He pinched the bridge of his nose and called the stableman inside. "How often is this stable cleaned?" The stableman promptly replied, "It is cleaned by dedicated staff every day, daily." Liam felt his heart sink. He opened his mouth and said, "I lost a ring. Go and ask if anyone has seen it." The horsekeeper's face changed expression, and without looking back, he left. Soon, the manager of the stable arrived, and respectfully said, "Liam, we've already asked around, and no one has found a ring. We always maintain strict standards for the people we hire." Liam frowned deeply. "Then let's check the surveillance camera. The ring fell right here. It couldn't have just grown legs and walked away." The manager glanced at the camera overhead and cautiously said, "Liam, this camera, it's broken. Just get someone to fix it then. Can't you handle even this small task?" Now the supervisor understood Liam's determination about the ring, nodded repeatedly, and hurried out in a fluster. Liam stood there, listening to the horse snorting, feeling somewhat dazed. Why that day when he stood here, did he without hesitation accuse Maggie of Callista, and why, when both had fallen to the ground, did he help Maggie first? On the day of the wedding, he had already decided that even if it was an arranged marriage, he would still treat Callista well, right? Countless questions swirled in his mind, echoing over and over again, nearly robbing him of the ability to think. He didn't know how long had passed before the manager finally came back to call for him. "Liam, the surveillance system has been restored." Liam came back to his senses and headed directly toward the monitoring room. Inside the monitoring room, the stable was displayed on the screen. On the screen, Maggie, riding the horse, and Callista, standing there, remained frozen in the frame. A staff member explained beside him, "Liam, our surveillance system records audio and video synchronously. We'll step out now and leave you undisturbed." Liam cast his gaze upon the monitor. Watching Maggie wearing a self-satisfied expression, and suddenly a sense of unease stirred within him. This wasn't the Maggie he remembered. Perhaps this was the real Maggie. He nodded casually, and soon the surveillance room was left with only him inside. Liam walked over and directly pressed the downward-pointing triangular play button, and the first words he heard were Maggie's bold provocation. "Ms. Callista coming to see Chris." When I was raising it with Liam, we struggled for a long time over what to name it. "What do you think of the name Chris?" For a moment, Liam would rather have believed he had imagined it. He dragged the surveillance video progress bar all the way to the beginning and once again heard Maggie say those words. The surveillance footage slowly advanced, and he gradually saw the full picture of what had happened that day. Maggie provoked. Callista retorted sarcastically. Maggie rode her horse to collide with Callista, and later, he held Maggie and hurled insults at Callista. Callista stood up and threw the ring at him. Finally, when everyone had left, Callista stood there, her face pale as she clutched her stomach. Seeing Callista lying on the ground unconscious, Liam instantly felt his eyes well up. So this was how she had lost their child. In this moment, Liam didn't even know who he should hate. The child he had lost was the one he had killed with his own hands. Liam suddenly raised his hand to cover his eyes, his eye sockets burning. Yet his heart felt cold. What right did he have left to say those words? "I don't want a divorce," and what right did he have to ask for Callista's forgiveness? He was even cheerfully thinking that Callista had made such a request because she wanted to give him a chance to make amends. She probably had anticipated this exact scene long ago. Liam slumped dejectedly in his chair, experiencing for the first time what it felt like to have 1,000 arrows pierce his heart. After a long while, he continued watching the video. The ring had originally fallen on the withered grass, then was swept away by someone, and after that, its whereabouts became unknown. He checked each surveillance point one by one, not missing a single detail, yet the ring had vanished just like that, leaving no trace to be found. Liam watched over and over again until his eyes grew sore and ached, but still found no trace of it. He couldn't get it back, just like Callista. Even if it has not been lost yet, it is destined to be lost. Knock knock knock. Liam, the cleaning department has come to report that the ring you asked for has been found. Please take a look and see if this is the one. Liam paused his breath and suddenly stood up to open the door. Just then, he saw a ring quietly lying in the director's hand, the same ring he had personally placed on Callista's finger. Liam takes it and grips it tightly in his hand. "Yes, thank you for the trouble." The director hesitated, about to speak, when he saw Liam walking quickly toward the door. "By the way, after the veterinarian treating Chris arrives, carefully check whether there's any foreign object beneath the skin at the base of its tail." Liam walked outside and was just about to take out his phone to check his flight ticket when he saw a call from Liam's mom flashing on the screen first. "Liam, I heard from your assistant that you're back." "Perfect. Someone from the Moore family has arrived. Come over here for a moment." Liam's mom's voice no longer carried its former sharpness and decisiveness. Instead, it now held a noticeable tone of fatigue. "Have you been checking the trending topics lately? Rumors about you and Maggie keep emerging endlessly, and we can't suppress them at all." "Liam, if you truly resent me that much for separating you back then from now on, I won't involve myself in your affairs anymore," she said. Liam paused and then replied softly, "Mom, it's not what you think. I'll handle things properly. Also, I don't want to divorce Callista." Liam's mom remained silent for a long time on the other end of the phone before hanging up directly. She held the phone in her hand and let out a long sigh. "At the time, you didn't know how to cherish it. Now that things have come to this point, what's the use of thinking about it again?" She took a deep breath, regaining her usual indifference and strength, and walked out the door. Meanwhile, online users were frantically theorizing about Maggie and Liam's dramatic wealthy family love affair. When suddenly a new item popped up on the trending list, parties involved respond. Instinctively clicking in, netizens saw that Liam had posted a new Twitter update. "Maggie and I have long been a thing of the past. I hope everyone won't let baseless rumors affect my wife and family." Maggie walked out of the school with a bright smile still on her face. She didn't listen at all to what the bearded white teacher was saying in class, but this acting workshop did have several classmates from good family backgrounds. It would be good to build some connections. They might become useful contacts after returning to China. Maggie carefully calculated her next move. By this point, she understood well that while resources are certainly the most important in the entertainment industry, connections are also indispensable. Thinking of something She took out her phone and prepared to call Liam to make dinner plans with him. However, the moment her phone, which had been turned off for a while, finally powered on, she was bombarded with countless messages and calls from her agent. A sudden wave of unease left her no time to check what her agent had sent. She immediately called back. "What's wrong, Maggie?" Her voice trembled as she asked this question. The agent's answer after a moment of silence nearly plunged her into an abyss. "Liam issued a statement cutting ties with you, saying you two were already history. Now the entire internet is boycotting you for knowingly being the other woman. All your endorsements have terminated their contracts with you, and the productions you were scheduled to work on are demanding compensation from the company for breach of contract. Maggie, you've been abandoned." Word by word, like thunder, shattered Maggie's momentary complacency. She held her phone, wanting to say something more, but her agent had already hung up. Maggie stood there, hastily opening Twitter, only to see Liam's merciless post. The word wife pierced Maggie's eyes, stinging intensely. Without a second thought, she dialed Liam's number. But it was turned off. For a moment, Maggie didn't even know what was happening, yet she was certain that if she couldn't win back Liam, she would inevitably be abandoned. She would never allow this. Maggie waited at the entrance of Liam's company division for 3 full days before finally seeing him. She rubbed her eyes hard until they hurt, then walked forward. "Liam, I saw what you posted on your Twitter. I'm glad you're willing to accept Mrs. Callista, which is exactly what I've always hoped to see. It might have been a misinterpretation from netizens regarding your words. Could you please clarify things for me publicly?" Liam stopped in his tracks, looking at her on the verge of tears. His expression suddenly complicated. "Really, Maggie, are you willing for me to become a loving husband with Callista?" Maggie felt a twitch in her brow, jealousy spilling like poison throughout her chest, but she still wore an innocent smile on her face. "Of course. I said back when we broke up that as long as you're happy, I can handle anything." Liam stared at her for 2 seconds before averting his gaze. "Yeah, I got it. Since we're on the same page, there's no need to clarify this matter. I've made myself very clear unless, of course, some deeper scandal about you gets exposed. For example, how you colluded with your agent to secretly film at the hot spring resort, then called reporters to stage a whole drama yourselves." Maggie stood frozen as if under a spell, completely stunned. As Liam was about to leave, Maggie instinctively grabbed his hand. Feeling Liam's casual gaze upon her, she felt momentarily embarrassed, but soon, she spoke up. "Liam, this is just how the entertainment industry is. If I don't fight back, I'll just get completely devoured alive." Liam, seeing her struggling to keep up the act, solemnly said, "Maggie, I've had someone repair the surveillance footage of your injury at the stable that day." In Maggie's fleeting startled gaze, Liam smiled bitterly. "Because of a promise made in my youth, I chose you without hesitation. I never imagined that beneath your facade lay such a vicious heart. Maggie, if I ever discover that you are using my name to navigate the world of fame and fortune, don't blame me for being ruthless." Liam shook off her hand and walked into the branch office alone. Maggie stood there in a daze, remaining motionless for a long time before slowly turning around. Her departing figure looked desolate and lonely, with no one hearing the hoarse murmur between her lips. "Liam, it was you who promised to protect me. How dare you go back on your word now?" Liam returned to his office, and the thought of Maggie's shocked and despairing gaze from earlier weighed even more heavily on his mind. He sat there for a long time before pressing the intercom button and calling the branch manager in. "Find a few sharp people here and have them keep an eye on this person." He sent Maggie's photo to the manager's phone and, pinching the bridge of his nose, said, "Remember, if she shows any unusual behavior or attempts to approach Mrs. Liam, report it to me immediately. If necessary, you can call the police directly." The manager took a glance and nodded. "All right, Mr. Liam, this afternoon, the person in charge from the Xie family will come over to discuss business matters. We will need you to be there in person." Liam nodded and said, "Understood. You may go ahead and make the arrangements." After the manager left the room, Liam pulled out the ring he had found at the racetrack, slowly clenched it tightly in his hand, as if his heart was being gripped ever tighter by this ring, making it hard for him to breathe. What should he do to gain Callista's forgiveness? Before he could figure it out, in the afternoon when Rex came over to discuss business, Liam was astonished to see Callista dressed in business attire standing beside him. Rex smiled. "Mr. Liam, this is my newly hired assistant." Callista offered a polite smile. "Mr. Liam, This is the proposal from the C group regarding this project. Please have a look. As she leaned closer, a faint fragrance wafted toward him, just like the scent that once lingered in the bedroom of Norman's house. Liam took a deep breath, calming himself as he looked at the proposal in his hands. After finishing it, he raised his head to look at Rex and said slowly, "Overall, I have no issues with this proposal. As for the pricing, you can discuss that with the person in charge of the local branch." Rex curled his lips slightly. "Mr. Liam. The final page of the proposal includes our final quote for this project. It seems you're not entirely satisfied. Why don't you suggest a figure?" Liam remained unmoved. "I'll leave this part for someone else to handle." Rex didn't press further. "Since that's the case, I won't stay any longer. I'll also send someone to follow up on the subsequent matters." As he watched him rise to leave, Liam spoke up. "Rex, now that we've finished our business discussion, I need to talk to Callista about some personal matters." Rex glanced at the dazed Callista, his eyes carrying a hint of encouragement. "Callista, since Mr. Liam has asked you to stay, you might as well make some things clear to him. I'll wait for you in the car." Only after seeing Callista nod did Rex actually walk out just like that. He had known Callista far longer than Liam had, and understood her much better. Callista was a very gentle woman, but once her bottom line was crossed, no amount of effort could make amends. During his time back in the country, he had already thoroughly investigated the matters between Callista and Liam. Back when the two families arranged the marriage, he was at a critical stage in his research. By the time his results came out, the marriage alliance was already a done deal, and he had no choice but to let go. But now, it was Liam who failed to cherish her, leaving Callista with no room to turn back. In that case, even if Liam and Callista were to spend countless moments alone together, it would still be impossible to undo what's been done. Rex lowered his gaze, hiding his tenderness from the world, and he, as always, would keep waiting. If he could wait until spring blossoms, that would be wonderful. If not, it still wouldn't be a pity. Having met someone for whom he could passionately give his love, even once in a lifetime. In the conference room, Liam looked at Callista, feeling an unprecedented tension in his heart. In contrast, Callista asked him calmly, "Mr. Liam, what's the matter?" Liam pressed his thin lips together, slowly took out the ring from his pocket, and said with difficulty, "The ring, I found it." Callista remained silent. "Flying from Argentina to Shanghai, there are no direct flights, and the journey takes more than 20 hours. In other words, Liam found the ring within a single day and rushed back without stopping." She glanced at Liam and saw tiredness in his eyes, along with an irrepressible sense of guilt. Callista thought for a moment and asked him, "So, when you were looking for this ring, what did you see?" Liam's heart, which had been hanging in suspense, dropped with a thud, causing him pain, yet bringing a sense of relief as if he had finally come to terms with the inevitable. He gave a bitter laugh. "So, asking me to find the ring was just a pretense. What you really wanted was for me to see that surveillance footage. I never imagined you could be this clever." Callista looked at him quietly and spoke slowly. "After all, seeing is believing, and I didn't trust that you'd believe me." Those words pierced Liam's heart like countless holes, filling his bloodstream with nothing but cold. He opened his mouth. "So, you never intended to forgive me, right?" There was a tremor in his voice, like a prisoner awaiting his final verdict. Callista fell silent again. She looked at Liam, thinking for a long time before finally uttering one word. "Yes, Liam. Do you know why I told my parents back then that I wanted to arrange a marriage with you? Because I like you." Liam quickly raised his head. He knew Callista liked him, but he had thought it started after their engagement. Could it be that her feelings began even before the arranged marriage? Callista seemed to fall into a memory. "We once met briefly, but you've probably already forgotten. I've liked you for a long time. So when the option of whether or not to marry you was presented to me, I agreed without hesitation. I thought you were a responsible person. Since you were willing to marry me, at least there was a possibility for us, but I was wrong. You didn't enter this marriage with a clean slate. You never truly regarded me as your real wife." Callista spoke with apparent calm, but beneath the conference table, her hands were slowly digging into her palms. How could it not hurt? With nothing but her own brave sincerity, she had stepped into a one-sided marriage, only to lose her unborn child and let go of the person she had secretly loved for 10 years. Any one of these things alone would have been enough to leave her in unbearable pain. Liam was struck by each word she spoke. As if his spine had been shattered, he hung his head, unable to utter a single word. Callista blinked hard and whispered, "You never chose me, so why should I choose to forgive you now? Liam, I'm not a saint, and neither are you. If you hadn't discovered my innocence, if you hadn't found out about losing the child, tell me honestly, would you be speaking to me so humbly right now, saying you don't want a divorce?" Liam, his lips turned pale. Yet he found himself unable to utter a single word. He realized he had feelings for Callista, but those feelings were still entangled with pride and self-respect. If only he hadn't seen that footage, just as Callista said, he wouldn't. Liam slumped backward, his deep black eyes losing all their previous anticipation and certainty. He knew that from this moment on, he no longer had the qualification to ask for forgiveness. Callista, he couldn't keep her. People are always like this. They only realize their regret after they've lost someone. Just like Liam at this moment, he knew all too well that he had no right to feel this way. Yet facing such a radiant Callista, an inexplicable surge of love wildly grew in his heart. He forcefully suppressed those feelings, gazing steadily at Callista, and painfully uttered 4 words, "I understand." Callista loosened the hand she had been tightly clenching beneath the table, and gave him a polite yet distant smile. "Then Mr. Liam, when you have time to return home, please remember to sign the divorce agreement. I'll take my leave now." Liam, watching her prepare to leave without hesitation or regret, couldn't help but call out to her, "Callista, have dinner with me tonight." He looked at the turning back Callista, smiling faintly, "Just the two of us, okay?" Callista glanced at the time on her watch, hesitating for 2 seconds. "Okay." Liam finally breathed a sigh of relief. Callista sent a message to Rex, then followed Liam out of the branch building together. Watching Rex's south car slowly drive away, Liam suddenly felt like he didn't quite understand him anymore. It was unlike him to quietly wait for someone like Rex had done. What he wanted was to be together every day, to stay by each other's side forever. Still, he glanced at Callista beside him and let out a bitter smile. The two stood by the roadside waiting for a car, unaware that in a nearby cafe, a pair of jealous eyes had fallen upon them. Maggie sat there, her hands tightly gripping the coffee cup, oblivious to the scalding heat of the cup's surface. "So that's it, you've fallen for Callista and that's why you want to leave me." "Liam, how could you?" Maggie watched the figures of Liam and Callista getting into the car, her jaw clenching so hard she could actually hear her teeth grinding together. She abruptly stood up and headed straight to her car parked outside. The jealousy burning in her heart shattered her reason, driving her nearly to madness. Just as she started the car to follow Liam and the other person, a jeep parked by the roadside quietly trailed behind. Meanwhile, the person in charge also received a message, "President, that Maggie has driven after Mr. Liam." The person in charge frowned and typed back, "Keep a close eye on her. Don't let her cause any trouble. A woman who has lost everything is truly terrifying." On the other side, Liam took Callista to a restaurant in the city center. After they were seated, he turned to Callista and said, "It's not quite mealtime yet, but there's a small concert here featuring Wedding in a Dream, which you like. The restaurant will open after the concert ends." Noticing Callista's surprised expression, he smiled and said, "I've heard your alarm tone is this piece, so I guessed you might like it." Actually, wanting to understand a person is very simple. It's merely a matter of whether one truly cares or not. Callista smiled at him. "Thank you." Liam twitched his lips slightly but didn't respond. What he wanted was clearly more than just these 2 words, yet, at this moment, the only thing he and Callista could still share were just these 2 words. Soon, the soft flow of violin and piano melodies filled the space between the two, enveloping them in quiet serenity. But someone wanted to shatter this tranquility. "Liam, you promised me with a pinky swear that you'd protect me forever. Are you going to break that promise now? Don't you remember what we said the first time we made a pinky swear? Things promised with a pinky swear must always come true. So what exactly are you doing now?" Callista's peaceful mood was instantly shattered. She turned her head to look at Maggie and spoke lightly. "Are you sure you're the one who made that promise with him back then?" Maggie stiffened, then sharply retorted, "If not me, then would it be you?" The more nervous someone feels, the louder their voice becomes. Meanwhile, Liam's pupils suddenly constricted. He looked toward Callista, his eyes filled with disbelief. Then he heard Callista ask, "Then tell me, under what circumstances did you two make the pinky promise? What color were you wearing? What happened to you that day?" Liam seemed to understand something. He glanced at Callista, then at Maggie, feeling nothing but absurdity in his heart. Impossible. How could he have mistaken the person? Maggie felt alarm bells ringing in her mind and instinctively said, it's been so long. How could I possibly remember clearly? As she spoke these words, she saw Liam looking at her with a fierce intensity in his eyes, as if he wanted to skin her alive with sheer ruthlessness. Callista seemed oblivious to Liam's gaze. Merely smiling faintly, no one will forget what happened that day. She wasn't wrong, at least Liam, one of the kidnapped parties, remembered it all too clearly. He remembered the softness and slenderness of the girl's fingers when they hooked pinkies. He remembered the white dress with blue flowers she wore that day, and he especially remembered her saying, "Okay, I believe you." Liam looked at Maggie, his eyes gradually filling with bloodshot redness. He not only belatedly realized who he truly liked, but had also been mistaken about the person all along, and Maggie, knowing all along that she wasn't the one he was looking for, had still managed to deceive herself for so long. Liam felt like he was going crazy, but before he could even react, Maggie, realizing something, completely snapped. Out of nowhere, a small knife appeared in her hand, and she lunged straight toward Callista, but her madness didn't last longer than 2 seconds. 2 tall white men chased her from behind and grabbed her arms, one on each side. "Mr. Chi, sorry, we lost control for a moment and let her rush up here." Liam glared coldly at the still struggling Maggie and said coldly, "She's assaulted someone with a weapon. Take her to the police station and let the police handle it." After Maggie was dragged away without mercy, Liam turned to look at Callista. "Why you? How long have you known?" Callista played casually with the flower arrangement on the table and spoke indifferently. "On the day you left your phone at my apartment, I saw the note you left for Maggie," Liam urged anxiously. "But why didn't you tell me?" Callista lifted her eyelids to glance at him, smiling gently yet ruthlessly. Would it have made any difference? Liam felt his excited heart drenched by a bucket of ice water, instantly frozen into stillness. Callista lost her appetite and stood up, picking up her things. "Liam, since that day at the racetrack, you should understand that no matter what happens, I can never go back. At this point, I just hope we can part on good terms, and when we meet again, we can nod at each other without any awkwardness." Callista still wore a smile on her face. "Liam, goodbye." The sound of high heels was like stepping on Liam's heart. Moving away step by step, Liam was sitting there, as scenes with Callista played before his eyes like a revolving lantern. It turned out that from the very beginning, he had been on the wrong path, meeting at the right time, reuniting at the wrong time. Finally, his voice hoarse, he murmured that farewell which felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. "Goodbye, Callista." On the first day of October, Callista completed the first stage of her studies and returned home with Liam. At this time in the country, both the two families only provided ambiguous responses. While Maggie's management company had long issued a statement that Maggie is no longer a part of the company's artists, the online speculation about the love and vengeance between these three continues endlessly. On this day, paparazzi spotted the two main characters of the melodramatic saga, Liam and Callista, at airport. Soon after the paparazzi released the photos, Liam issued a statement. "Recently, there have been many rumors online about me and my wife. We will issue a clarification regarding this matter shortly." This polite way of speaking left many netizens stunned. This Norman family's eldest son, when did he develop such a good temper, regardless of the online rumors? The Norman family's villa has once again witnessed the same scene as that day. The Norman family's elders and the Moore family's elders sat face to face again, the only difference being that this time, the sofa had 2 additional people, Liam and Callista. Seeing Liam's mom look helpless, Liam lowered his gaze. "That's exactly how things are. I've already discussed and agreed upon the divorce arrangements with Callista." Callista glanced at him, then nodded. "Mom, thank you very much for your care and support in the past, but indeed there are irreconcilable differences between Liam and me. I hope you can understand." Liam's mom sighed helplessly. "Of course I understand. We old folks can't really interfere in the affairs of the young. We just hope this won't affect the cooperation between our two families. Things have come to this point, and the arranged marriage is inevitably broken off." Liam's mom nonetheless hoped to salvage something. Callista's dad paused thoughtfully before saying indifferently, "The children's matters are private affairs. As for our cooperation, we will naturally handle it professionally and impartially." The divorce arrangements were quickly finished. Liam and Callista pulled out their cell phones and each posted a message on Twitter. "Callista, we met once, and from now on, I hope you are well on your own journey." At Liam, "Liam, the water has flowed away, I just wish you peace." At Callista, after posting this Twitter message, Neither of them paid attention to the stir it might cause. Callista put away her phone and looked at her parents. Dad, shall we go? Callista's dad, Callista's mom had no objections and were just standing up when they noticed Liam across from them rising as well. Callista, last time in Argentina, we didn't get to have our farewell meal, before getting the divorce papers. Let's have one last dinner together. Callista gave him a surprised look, then nodded. All right. Everyone only saw Liam's calm demeanor and didn't think much of it. Liam's mom gave a bitter smile, closed her eyes, and said nothing. Liam and Callista walked out and headed directly to a quiet private restaurant. At the dinner table, Callista looked at the dishes being served one after another. Every single one was her favorite. Her expression remained calm and unmoved. Meanwhile, Liam showed no sign of seeking credit. It seemed as if today, he had simply wanted to have a meal with Callista. He tasted each dish carefully, then suddenly spoke up. Maggie has already been dealt with. I've had my lawyer file a lawsuit against her for intentional harm across borders, as well as some other domestic issues. From now on, she won't be appearing in the public eye again. Callista paused with her chopsticks, then smiled slightly. Okay, that's good then. The two said nothing else, and the meal ended in silence. As she was about to leave, Liam called out to her, in the future, if you need any help in business, feel free to ask. Callista turned to look at him. The sunlight falling on her, outlining her figure with a golden glow, she smiled calmly and freely. Actually, I hope I can overcome each difficulty on my own, but if I ever truly have nowhere else to go, I'll consider coming to you, Mr. Liam. Liam looked at her and smiled too. I believe in you. I wish Ms. Callista a bright future full of blooming flowers. Liam sat there, watching Callista walk further away, until she disappeared. Adult farewells are always silent, yet linger for a long time. Liam stood up and got into the car, habitually turning on the radio. It was still Night's Allure, but Maggie's voice was no longer there. The music flows slowly, passing by, never meeting, looking back, turning around, still missing. Loved one missed. Loved one missed. The end.